Well, if you happen to click on this video, you're probably among the few and the proud that are still talking about Generation 6 video game consoles in 2021. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the Gen 6 console with the handle. Oh yeah, that's right, the Nintendo GameCube, and let you know should you purchase and collect for this console in 2021. What are we drinking today?
Today we're drinking White Chocolate Raspberry Imperial White Milk Stout by Southern Tier Brewing Company.
All right, you know the drill. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that bell icon so you never miss one of our bi-weekly uploads. And sit back, relax, pour yourself a beer if you care to, and let's talk about the Nintendo GameCube and if it's worth purchasing in 2021.
Nothing sexier than a complete GameCube collection. I just love running my fingers over the spines of the game. Oh, hey, what's up everybody? This is Retro Wolf 88 and you're watching Gaming Off the Grid. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. Enjoy the show.
All right, here we go. It's hard to argue that Gen 6 is probably one of the generations that folks are most nostalgic for right now. GameCube prices are soaring, PS2's kind of coming up, Dreamcast market's already been kind of crazy. But today we're gonna hone in on Nintendo's console that they put a handle on, which we'll talk a little bit more about that later, and really dive into, is it feasible to collect for in 2021? This was Nintendo's first disc-based console. Yes. You know, the prior generation, they had a hard time fitting everything they wanted to on the cartridges, so they dove into the disc side.
But, like Nintendo, trying to be different, the disc was this big.
I mean,
why'd they have to do that?
Why? I don't know. But anyway, the mini disc console of the generation. The console launched on November 18th of 2001, which
means it's 20 years old this year.
Yeah, so I think it was a couple days after the OG Xbox, so it technically was the last console released in the generation. Yep. You had the Dreamcast quite a bit prior to that, and then the PS2.
And then Xbox and GameCube.
Yeah, you know, and it came with the 4 controller ports, was kind of in line with everything else from the generation, with the exception of the PS2.
Yikes.
But it was also the third worst selling console of the generation with an install base of, I think, like 22 million.
That's crazy.
You wouldn't think that, because now people are probably the most nostalgic for the GameCube.
Well, it's weird, but it kind of makes sense because growing up, everyone I knew had a PS2.
Yeah.
Only one person I knew had a GameCube. One person.
Well, and the data supports it. I mean, the PS2 sold like 155 million units.
Had it.
I don't know about you, and this is kind of getting into like my memories and where my nostalgia lies for this, but my brother got a GameCube, and he got one fairly early on, and I believe he got Mario Sunshine and Spider-Man with it.
Ooh, nice.
But at that age, I was so beyond wanting to play Nintendo games. They seemed kind of kiddie and childish to me, which is odd because I love collecting for Nintendo stuff now. But man, being Luigi in Luigi's Mansion just wasn't as cool as being Tommy Vercetti in Vice City, you know? And so I was over Nintendo, and I think maybe Nintendo kind of ran up against that here, where a lot of their NES and SNES kids were looking for more mature content, more mature games, and they were maybe migrating over to the PS2 or the Xbox.
They were probably teenagers. They were angsty punks.
It was just a really weird time for me, and I remember my brother getting the GameCube, and you would have thought I would have been excited, and I was just like, okay, whatever.
Who cares?
I have a PS2, who cares? But I did end up really getting into it and enjoying it while he was playing it. So, we already mentioned Nintendo's first disc-based console, but you talked about the mini discs, which I do think maybe hurt Nintendo a little bit. It's weird to say this now, but it didn't play DVDs.
Yeah, but back in the day, man, the PS2 and the Xbox, that's why, and they could also play CDs.
I mean, it seems goofy, but man, when you had a PS2 as a kid, being able to play a DVD on that,
it was everything. You did everything on it.
It was like, I don't need anything else. The other odd thing was, you know, being the last one to release, this probably, or did, have the worst online or network connectivity.
Yeah.
You had to buy another adapter. And my math might not be right, but I think there was only 8 or 9 games that could be compatible with that network adapter, and that wasn't even all online. I think there was only 5 games that had online gameplay.
3 were just LAN party.
It was kind of like you buy this extra thing, but for why? And there just wasn't a big online presence. I think we already mentioned the handle. I think they were trying to say, hey, this is the next wave of the N64. Carry this over to your friend's house. It's smaller. It's like a lunchbox. You can take it anywhere with you and play multiplayer, 4-player, which there's a ton of fun to be had in doing so.
There is so much fun. Let's talk about our nostalgia of the GameCube. You already mentioned that your brother had it, and I only knew one person growing up that had one.
Do you remember what games you played and stuff?
So here's my biggest memory of the GameCube growing up is my one neighbor had it, and they had Mario Strikers, which is one of my favorite. So we would do 4-player 2v2 Strikers, and I just remember screaming, like we were yelling when people would score. Dude, it was so much fun. But man, it's 4-player. Man. And I just love like the title, the intro screen.
It was a really cool console, and again, I wasn't way into it when my brother first got it, but I slowly, because my brother's 4 years younger than me, so there was always like, hey Wes, can you come help me with this part? And I'd jump into a part of a game I had no idea where he was, and I would try helping him get through it, and he was becoming quite the gamer himself at the time, so it was a lot of fun seeing him get way into that. And I also liked that he had it so he wouldn't want to play my PS2 as much, so it was kind of twofold. But where I dove into the GameCube was when I was in college, and the next, the PS3, 360, so and I got almost the majority of our collection at that time.
Damn.
I got in really, really cheap on the GameCube. This black one was actually the first GameCube that I bought. I got it super cheap, and I don't have a lot of the receipts, but guys, I was getting some of the dingers for $5, $8, $10.
Wow.
And I loaded up on, 15, 20 good solid games around that time frame. And then right back around when we started the channel, I kind of started getting back into it. So to answer the question, where's my nostalgia? There's not much nostalgia for this console, but I absolutely love the console.
Yeah, same for me. I don't have much nostalgia either, but it's my favorite controller ever. What's weird is I love the GameCube so much, but I barely actually play it because we play our GameCube games on the Wii.
Yeah.
So it's like I love it so much.
Yeah,
it's a weird thing.
So looking into purchasing one in 2021, we're going to look at some of the things you could purchase, some of the console variants, the accessories, blah, 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 and then we're going to sum things up with kind of giving our advice, if you care to hear it, on should you purchase a GameCube in 2021. So, color variants.
Yes, it's so cool to bring up.
Nintendo was doing very, very well with this with the N64, with all the translucent colors, the solid colors,
the different controllers.
That was a really fun console at the time, just because friends, people would come over and nobody brought the same color controller. It was really fun. They kind of pulled back on that a little bit, I feel like, with this generation, at least in North America, which is predominantly what we're going to cover. And you're seeing the 3 console mainline color variants right here. It launched with only the Indigo.
Oh, really? So the color variants didn't come till later?
No.
Weird.
And then I believe the black variant was next in line, and then the silver variant. Now in North America, we missed out on that awesome spice orange or creamsicle orange.
That's my favorite color, and our buddies Do You Nerd actually have one.
Yeah. There's a lot of folks that get that one and then they mod it so that they can play it, which is an awesome variant. I think it's the sexiest GameCube there is, but it wasn't officially released in the US, and it's not natively made to play North American games. Now there was a couple package deals. I believe one was for Metroid Prime. Came with a black GameCube, and there was a Pokemon purplish color. I can't remember exactly, but it came with the Platinum Silver GameCube.
Ooh, nice.
But they were just the main consoles, but they came with a different, so it wasn't attached. It came with a different centerpiece.
Like a different disc?
Like a Metroid and then like a Pokemon one.
That's really cool.
Really what you were getting was this version of the console. And then the other thing that is worth noting is they did differ from having the digital AV out on the back. And we'll get some B-roll of this, but you see on here, there's the digital AV out, and then there's your standard analog out. And then later on, they removed that from the console.
Weird.
So not a lot of folks know that. So if you're wanting to use that, which a lot of the modern HD connectors and things like that use that digital port, which we'll dive into that, I guess, just right now. One thing that's always been a pain in the ass is we love playing everything on CRT.
Yes.
But the freaking component cables, dude.
Oh my gosh, they are so expensive.
I mean, what are they, 250, 300 now?
They're so expensive, and I think maybe because they were just rare, but weren't they, you could buy them on Nintendo's website at one point?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, though. You got to go back. That seems like now. Like, oh, well, everybody could get them. Man, back in the early aughts, not everybody was online, and ordering stuff online wasn't a common thing like it is now. And if you really look at this image, there's only the green, blue, and red on these component cables. So the audio has got to come from the analog source on the back of these consoles. And there's a special chip in the end of that makes it very hard to replicate. So there were no third-party companies that got in on that.
But if you have them, man, your GameCube is beautiful.
It is almost... Man, it's not. But if I ever found them for a decent price, I'd probably pull the pin. This console still looks amazing natively.
Yes, it does.
through composite if you're playing on a CRT. I always think back to that Metal Jesus video when he got the kiosk and he was going back and forth like, man, do I just get a CRT? Because that's how they were in the stores.
Or get a flat screen.
And he plugged it into this JVC TV and he's like, I'm blown away at how good this looks.
Yes.
I think it really speaks to playing some of these consoles, original hardware.
How they were meant to be played.
Yeah, but man, having those component cables, you could run that through a Trinitron, but nobody can afford those. But if you're going to pick one up, I would get one with that digital outlet.
Yes,
so
that's a good recommendation.
Component cables were an accessory. They're not one that's really affordable at this time. You've got the color variants. You had your standard controllers, which mimicked the color variants.
Yes, which
of
were,
the consoles.
and it's so cool because it's like the N64 because you can have 4 players and they're all different colors. And
now, this is one thing I don't know. I think you could buy that Orange Spice colored controller
in America,
because I've seen them around.
Weird.
Way more than I see the console.
Well,
so you could buy it like as an extra controller, but there was never the console released of that color.
Is the GameCube region locked?
Yes.
So yeah, and the controller doesn't matter. So that's probably why, you know.
I don't know. I think they released that color. I can't recall seeing it in the stores, but I think they did. Then you have the Wavebird controller, which is for the time it was the best wireless controller you could get, and it's highly collectible. We don't own one. We're fortunate to have I think 5 or 6 tight-sticked GameCube controllers. Do we want a Wavebird? Yes.
They are so nice.
Will we pay the $50-$60 to get a good one? No.
No.
But they are nice. So if we found one on the cheap, we would keep it, but we're not going to spend the cheddar to get one because it's just, we've got a couple like controller extension cords.
And our room's so small, we don't need that.
One major accessory that is climbed in price a little bit. I'm not saying you have to do it because a lot of people can emulate Game Boy games, but the Game Boy player.
We just recently got one.
Yeah, we got this from a good friend of the channel, Chris James T85. Him and I worked out a deal. He got an N64. I got this bad boy. But you can play Game Boy games, Game Boy Advance games, Game Boy Color games.
It's so cool. And especially back in the day, that was huge.
Yeah. So if you're looking and picking that up, there is a unique twist to it. You have to have
the disc.
Yes. So sometimes you'll find the players or you'll find the disc. I think the disc is more valuable than the player, but you've got to have them together, working in perfect harmony to get it to play the games, which is kind of odd. But if you see one out in the wild, just know you got to get the freaking disc. So of the accessories we've mentioned so far, I would go probably standard controller. If you really want to play your Game Boy games on the TV and you don't have a way to do that through emulation, that could be a good option for you. I think if you're a Game Boy collector and you're a traditionalist, that's probably a good way to go.
Another thing that I want to bring up is the network adapter, which we've already talked about.
Yeah.
A lot of people collect those, and it's fun for LAN parties. It's fun for doing double dash.
Yeah.
But we already mentioned it's not worth. It's like 3 games and the online. So it's cool to have. We don't have one, but we want one.
We've kicked around the idea because we do LAN parties all the time, and I think you can you do 16 players on double dash?
16 because 2 per cart.
Yeah.
We were in some tournaments at a con one time. I was like, man, I want it, but it's so you need 4 of them.
It's worth mentioning. We almost got first place.
Yeah.
We got second.
So
let's not talk about that. But we're pretty good at double dash. But yeah, that is a cool one. And then you've got the Game Boy Advance link cables. The game that stands out to me, I think there is a Final Fantasy game as well, but we played the
Zelda
Link 4 Swords.
Yeah, Zelda 4 Swords, which is so cool.
Yeah, so there's people playing on the TV, there's people playing on the Game Boy Advance.
And the game goes back and forth.
We played 4-player with Do You Nerd. It was so much freaking fun. The feasibility of having this, you'd need to have a really good setup. So like in 2021, if you didn't have all the stuff to do that, it's
going to be expensive.
That's a long road to hoe to get to be able to do that. Not that the cables are super expensive, but then to get 2 Game Boy Advances and the games and blah, blah, blah.
And that it can only do for one game, I know, for maybe another game.
I think there's a couple that use it. I know Final Fantasy does, but the one everybody talks about.
It's only a handful of games. Another cool thing that was on the GameCube was the drums, was the Donkey Kong Congos, or the bongos,
the Donkey Konga. I think there was a couple of those games. We don't own them.
Nope. I've actually never played
them. Not a mainline thing. It's one of those things, like kind of like the Wavebird. If we found a complete set at a garage sale, you guys probably know if you've watched the channel, we do flip and resell to fund our collection. Those would be something we might keep, just if nothing else to dick around with for a little bit and maybe sell down the line. But it's not something I'm actively coveting. Yeah. I think it's one of those we'd play it maybe a few times and then in the closet.
But they are cool.
There was also... Man, you might have to help me here. Is it Mario Party 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 7? One of them came with the microphone.
Yes.
We'll throw in some freaking screen cap of that.
I've never played with it, and to be honest, Mario Party's fun, but I'm not the biggest fan of it.
Yeah, I think that's one of those deals, though, for collectors. Like, if you're going to get whatever Mario Party that was that came with it, getting the big box version that came with that is a really cool thing. And then the memory cards. Memory cards are pretty cheap. A lot of them are pretty small in regards to, well, not only physically, but
size-wise.
The number of blocks or memory that are on the card. So you might want to grab a few of those if you're looking into getting into collecting for it. But of all the extra shit we mentioned,
I don't think it's
other than a controller and a memory card. And if you want to play Game Boy games, but you're going to be looking at about $100 for one of these.
Which is crazy.
I don't know that it's really worth that unless you can get a good deal or a trade. Like I was able to do, we have an extra N64. Chris James, he's like, I need a 64. And I'm like, I need a GameCube player. Let's work something out, dude. But we wouldn't have spent $100.
I feel like the tone of is going to follow the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some games.
Yeah,
so obviously
games.
The GameCube library is pretty sweet. There's a lot of amazing games. I've already mentioned Strikers. That's one of my favorite games, one of my favorite GameCube games of all time. I think that's a must-own game, but it's a pricey game.
So this is where this episode, I kind of feel like takes a turn. Because getting into the console, whatever color variant, comparatively to the rest of the generation, is relatively affordable and cheap. I mean, yes, you can find them in the wild for dirt cheap sometimes, but you're probably looking at that $40 to $65 range for the console, which is like, you're probably watching like, that ain't horrible.
Yeah. Now the games.
The market has gotten out of control, and
it's
honestly,
not even fun.
Dude, if we didn't have some of these games, I don't think we'd pay the price.
No, and we've even gone through our collection and gotten rid of some dinners just because the market's going crazy.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, okay, we love this game, but when was the last time we played it? Let's sell it and buy something that we are going to play now. Dude, the market, I don't know what's going on. It's just insane.
I think it's two things. I think it's kind of a coefficient of the low install base. You know, any console you look at that has a low install base, and I'm looking at really like sub 20 million.
Yeah.
Now this is slightly over that. But then you factor in that it's fairly low install base, and you factor in that it's got Nintendo's name on it, which is why I think if you look at this deal here, a Dreamcast had a low install base, highly collectible. And that's why when we talk about the Wii U, we get so passionate about it. Like, if you want a Wii U, get it now. Low install base, Nintendo's name, follow the trail, the history. Yeah. But the games have gotten out of control. I'd like to talk about some of our favorite games on the console that are exclusive. And we'll throw up price charting prices down in the corner below. But it's hard to say, go out and get these. Because, Mario Kart Double Dash.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite Mario Kart games.
It's amazing.
2-player per kart, man.
It's not my favorite Mario Kart game, but it's up there, and I could maybe be swindled with a few drinks to say that it is. But I do love it, but the price has gotten a little outlandish. I think we're north of 50 now for that game.
And then another staple, I think it was a launch title for the GameCube.
Yeah.
Luigi's Mansion, which I know there's a second and a third one, but man.
That first one.
It's a perfect game.
Something about the charm of that game. When we played that, I've played it like each of the last 3 or 4 years, every year, and I just love the game.
It's so freaking awesome. And then I already mentioned Strikers. It's one of the... I'm not even a fan of soccer, and it's just a fantastic arcade sports game.
They perfected the simplicity in that game.
Yes.
The next game in the series, which happened to be on the Wii, was like, it's cool, but they did way too much shit with it.
It's too chaotic.
Mario Strikers, one of the best arcade sports games ever made.
Speaking of Mario Strikers, I got to bring up all the other Mario sports games. Dude, they're so much fun. You got freaking tennis, golf, baseball. Dude, they're all so much fun.
It was so great, and it was like a capsule in time, because they were okay after this, but like, dude, this is where it was going on for Mario Sports.
It's incredible.
F-Zero. This is the last entry in the F-Zero series, F-Zero GX, and I think it's probably the best. I love that game.
It's so much fun. I think it's probably the best F-Zero game. Yeah. And then Eternal Darkness, what a fantastic...
Scary as shit.
It's a fantastic game. That game is also super pricey. And then you got freaking Super Smash Bros. Melee, which, the first time I played Melee... Yeah, I was like, what is this? Remember Smash Bros. On the N64? And then Melee came out and you're like, what the...
And I'm kicking myself. Do you remember we were game hunting with Captain Algebra, and Captain told me, he's like, dude, just get it. There was a CIB copy of Smash Bros. For $45 at that store. And Captain even told me, dude, you might want to get that. You're going to regret not getting that. I didn't get it because I'm a cheapskate, and now this game's, it's north of 50, probably north of 60 at this point. We have Smash Ultimate, so I'm like kind of okay.
Yeah, because Smash Ultimate's badass, but back in the day, Melee was like, holy crap.
Mario Sunshine. Amazing game. I think it gets shit on. I would rather play Sunshine than Mario 64. Hot take.
Well, it's crazy. It went from Mario 64 to like the crazy upgrade from the N64 to the GameCube. It's just graphically and just game-wise, Sunshine is a fantastic Mario.
You know, this game prior to the 3D All-Stars coming out was hovering in that $55 to $65 range. I don't know that 3D All-Stars has impacted its price. I haven't looked.
I guess I haven't looked either.
But I know at one point here in recent times it was really expensive. And then these next two games aren't super expensive, but the Rogue Leader, Rogue Squadron 2 and 3.
Yes, those games, they're amazing.
We're big fans of shooters. We're big fans of Star Wars. I know the games that everybody talks about as Knights of the Old Republic.
Yes.
For what I like to play, which I'm not saying I don't like RPGs, but anymore I don't have the time to play RPGs. I would rather play these Rogue Squadron games.
Dude,
I love both of them.
And they look amazing.
They do.
Still,
Fantastic.
dude. They're so much fun.
And while we're talking about favorite games on the console, I can't, anytime I have an excuse to talk about Metal Gear. Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes.
Yes.
Can't recommend that you go out and buy it because it's so damn expensive. This game's like notching up there to about $100. But man, when this came out, it was Metal Gear Solid 1 redone in Metal Gear Solid 2 graphics, which I'm obsessed with the art style of Metal Gear Solid 2.
It's mind-blowing.
They took some liberties with some of the voice acting and story parts, but not enough to make me like not love this and prefer playing this as my version of Metal Gear Solid 1. And then I've always loved, even from 64, but Wave Race, Blue Storm,
Great.
I've always loved the freaking water physics in the Wave Race games, and this one was just the next one in the series, and it's freaking amazing.
And you can't forget to talk about another Nintendo IP, Star Fox, man. You got Star Fox Adventures and Star Fox Assault, both great Star Fox games.
And it was cool because you kind of, in these, you know, you kind of change the mold, and you got to play more as Fox McCloud as far as like getting out and meandering around, and more of an adventure than
instead of a spaceship.
Typical, yeah. So it was kind of like, man, I never knew they were like this. And yeah, so those are pretty awesome games. Those ones aren't too bad. Those are about 25 to 30 a piece.
Still,
yeah. Anyway,
still
we're still getting up there in a lot of these.
Those are just a handful of games, dude.
In no particular order.
Yeah, there's so many other GameCube games, and I will bring up third-party games. There's a lot of sweet third-party games on the GameCube, but I'd rather play them on the PS2 or Xbox, especially the Xbox because they look better.
Yeah.
And we've already talked about that in our Xbox buying guide.
Yeah, and there are some games that's ironic, though. There are a few games, it is worth noting, that kind of the graphical or power of the consoles anymore seems to go Xbox, GameCube, PS2. It seems like there's some games on the GameCube that people would prefer to play on the GameCube. So the little guy was small, but he was mighty. But
I think it might be due to the controller, because the controller's perfect.
Yeah, that's a big point. But the current market has gotten out of control. The spikiness of it has just been kind of unworldly, and I didn't really see it coming, and it happened really freaking fast. That's kind of where this episode kind of maybe takes the doom and gloom term. You know, what's the future of the console? Being a Nintendo console, I don't think we're a long ways off from seeing a cliff or a dip, I feel like.
It just keeps going up.
Yeah.
It keeps raising in price. It's just low install base is affecting that. It's just insane. And since it's a Nintendo thing, I think collectors are buying it up really expensive, and they're not going to get rid of it. So it's going to be probably a couple generations probably.
And disc games are harder to keep clean and minty. You know, comparatively, like a cartridge, man, you can do a lot of work on a cartridge to bring it back to life. Discs, if they're dicked, they're dicked.
Yeah, they're done.
Shit. Shinola.
I also think, you know, we're just now, I feel like, kind of seeing, and I'm not saying we're seeing a cliff on the NES, but we're starting to see the market simmer and mellow a little bit. And we're so far out from that console that came out in 85 to the console that came out in the early aughts. I mean, I think it's going to be a while.
It's going to be a while, and now the question is, should you purchase one in 2021?
Yeah.
And I'm going to say no. Okay. This is like one of those raise your own mail type of situations, because like if you really want one and you have the cash and you don't care about that kind of stuff, then absolutely, dude, I love the GameCube. The games are awesome.
Yeah.
But for the average gamer, for the average collector, it's not. I mean, I don't think it's worth it, man.
Kind of why, it all depends on what type of collector you are.
Yes,
That's why I think you said read your own mail. For us, we collect on a budget, and we want to get the most bang for our buck, and I don't feel like we're missing out. Now, I'm speaking from a place where I've got 15 to 20 games that I really wanted on the console. There's a ton more that I do want, but man, I could go so much further with my spend on the OG Xbox or the PS2 if I'm really diving into this generation. Another console I love from this generation, it was the first console I ever bought with my own money, is the Sega Dreamcast.
Which is iconic.
Guys, I haven't bought a Dreamcast game in like a year and a half to 2 years.
Because it's so
Same
pricey.
reason applies. Not because I don't like the Dreamcast, but from a collector standpoint, from the fun of going out and hunting, from being able to get good deals on stuff, and making your dollar go the furthest. Because if you're watching this and you're in our age range, you know, the mid-20s to mid-30s, you gotta stop spending all your disposable income on video games. So it's kind of like, what can I get into on the cheap and have fun and relive some good memories? And I just don't think now is the time. And honestly, looking out on the horizon,
it's going to be a
while before I think getting into this. Now, if you find one on the cheap and get a few games, but it's just a slippery slope. Because you know how it goes collecting.
Yeah, you get just a little taste of it, and you're like, I want the full
It's a rabbit hole. Then you're making drunken eBay purchases on Saturday night. And then come Wednesday, you're like, when did I order this?
How am I going to pay
for $85 for Smash Bros? So I just know at least how a lot of collectors go. A couple is never enough.
No, yeah.
I think it's a very, very slippery slope. I think it's a market that is not going to adjust for some time. I think it's only going to continue to inflate. I just think there's so many better ways right now. You could collect for the Wii U, the PS2, the OG Xbox, even NES is starting to mellow
the
a little bit.
360, the PS3, the Wii. There's you could collect for so many other consoles and just play those. Be patient.
Yeah.
It's going to be a while. I mean...
And you'll find games here and there. You will. We just did a hunting episode where I think we probably found 10 GameCube games.
And we found Pikmin. That's a dinger. And finding them in the wild is tough. They're so expensive. If you're going to do it, I recommend not buying games and just buying the consoles. Yeah. Because that's reasonably priced. Everything else. What's crazy is the GameCube is still so relevant. Because on the Switch, you can use GameCube controllers. Yep. The Wii plays GameCube games. It's like...
The Smash Melee is still a tournament game, all over.
It's crazy how relevant it still is, and it's 20 years old.
And it was the third worst selling console of the generation. It's
like Nintendo's like, oh, we know this is the best controller. Yeah. We know this is the best.
It's like its legacy is way better than it was at the time.
I know.
It's crazy.
Just growing.
It's like the rear view mirror for the GameCube is a freaking magnifying glass because things are just going out there. But it's not that we don't like the console, guys. I just think there's more you can do with your money. A lot of easier consoles to collect for. So again, that's just two random Joe Blow's advice. You got to read your own mail. And speaking of reading our own mail, what do we think of this beer?
Mine is almost gone. That's because we're sharing one bottle.
Yeah.
This is the White Chocolate Raspberry Imperial White Milk Stout by Southern Tier Brewing Company. This comes in at 10%. I think our buddy BK sent this to us.
He did,
and
so gracias, BK.
The nose is incredible.
I don't even know, a white milk stout. I have zero experience in that.
Zero experience. This is just... It's exactly what it says it is, guys. But it's just so smooth, so sweet, so delicious, This is a delicious, perfect beer.
I mean, somebody's having a little too much fun with this, but I got to agree. It's just epic.
It's just incredible, but it's one of those beers, for how good and sweet it is, it's a slow drinker, and I probably would only have one.
Yeah.
Because it is super sweet. Like that chocolatey and raspberry taste is a little too much, but for one, it's perfect.
Yeah. I think it's great.
It's so good.
I don't think I can add much to it. I think it's well balanced. To your point, it's very sweet, but it's not one of those beers that's nauseating or too rich. It is rich, but it's just like that perfect. It's just fantastic, and I've never had a beer like this.
It's so freaking good, and I would never guess that this is 10%. It does not have any burn at all. This is a dangerous, delicious beer.
All right, guys. So there you have it. As much as it pains us to say, because we freaking love the GameCube, we can't recommend getting out and starting to collect for it if you're starting in 2021. Yeah. If you've sniffed around the GOT-G playground, one thing we really love to do is let you guys know how to collect on the cheap. And if that's one of our missions,
we can't endorse this.
It's just really hard to say, hey, you should really dive into the GameCube because you're going to freaking damn near go broke trying to collect for this thing. And then you're going to look and be like, well, shit. Could add a freaking 100 Xbox games and an Xbox for $250. It's just, we love it.
You would spend so much money and you'd have a library of 3 games.
Yeah.
It's tough because this is the first buying guide we've done where we say, hey, don't buy it, but we love it. It's such a...
it's just kind of like, it's kind of how I feel with the Dreamcast and the Saturn. Now, we have a Dreamcast, we have a Saturn. Decent Dreamcast collection, very small Saturn collection. But I just have came to the conclusion the window has closed for me.
Yep.
I missed the freaking window. But...
shame on us.
That sucks. And I could roll around in my sorrows and be like, can
I go back?
I can't collect anymore. But there's so many other wide open freaking windows where people are throwing shit out and you can grab it for dirt cheap. That why spin your wheels on what you can't get when there's so much out there that you can get? And I would nudge you in those directions. as much as I hate to say it, because I love you, man. I freaking love you. But you're expensive. And your games are a son of a bitch. All right.
I'm getting emotional.
We appreciate you guys tuning in and subscribing to the channel, and we wish you all the best in your game collecting endeavors in 2021 and beyond. And we'll see you next time right here on Gaming Off the Grid.
I know.
You know, it's crazy. It's like the rear view mirror for the Wii. It's like the rear view mirror for the GameCube. It's a very impressive brew.
It's like so rich and sweet.
So good. Sit back, relax, pour yourself a beer if you care to, and let's take a look at the Nintendo. Fuck.